Hello, hello. Welcome to Conversations. I'm your host Muqtedar Khan, and today I'm going to talk to you about two very critical and important developments. One is a major summit between Europe and China that is taking place after several years. I think the last time Europe and China had a EU-China summit was in 2018. So over 7 years ago, long before even COVID. And the other thing that I want to talk about is this very interesting development that is taking place. A battle about Rafale has started again in the media. And there are all kinds of new accusations being made by the CEO of Rafale, the Dassault, the company that makes Rafale. There are interesting leaks coming out of the French intelligence. And so we will talk about this new extension to the India Pakistan war of Operation Sindoor that happened in May for about 100 hours. And so it has gone into a new swing. So we are seeing stages of the war. So I will talk about this new element of the war. I'll show you some of those articles which are coming out. And there are also articles in the United States that have been published about the crash or not of Rafale. So I'll try to provide some context to it if possible, because there's now so much of, shall we say, no, the war is over, but the fog of war is not yet over, as far as the the story of Rafale is going on. So we will talk about that, and then after that, if there are any questions or comments from you all, I will read those comments and I will answer your questions. So let's first talk about what is going on. There is clearly a turmoil in the global economy right now, obviously triggered by, unfortunately, the president of my country, President Donald Trump, who keeps changing his mind every other day. He just can't seem to make it. And he makes these pronouncements as if they are final and then they are not. And it has created a lot of confusion, and the business sector is very upset because he's not sticking to the policies that he advocates, and so they're not able to essentially go forward and make plans. So, for example, if he says that he's going to impose a 25% tariffs on South Korea and Japan. So, if you are importing stuff from South Korea and Japan right now, and you know that he's going to impose a 25% tariff on South Korea and Japan starting August 1st. So you would front load yourself now. You would buy a lot of stuff, not just the stuff you are going to sell in July, but the stuff that you will sell in August, September, October, November, as much as you can afford to stock up, and whatever Japan and China are able to ship before the 1st of August, you would buy all of that and get them airlifted here to save those tariffs, right? And then imagine on 2nd of August, Donald Trump says, well, we have a deal, and so I'm going to reduce the tariffs from 25% to 0%. And now you're going to say, oh no, I'm stuck with this inventory. I have borrowed money to buy all the stuff, some of it that I'm going to sell in December, 4 months from now. So, first, I have to spend money keeping this inventory. The other, I'm going to be paying interest on the money that I borrowed to buy all the stuff. So, it's going to really upset a lot of business people. But nevertheless, Donald Trump seems to be going on in his merry way. He's drunk with his own power, and he has found this magic stick with which he feels that he can literally scare the rest of the world. And as a result of that, he is constantly wielding this tariff power. I mean, threaten BRICS with it, with 10%. Is he actually going to? I'm really going to keep an eye on that and see if at all he imposes the 10% extra tariffs on BRICS countries, because he said this is a policy in his tweet and not just a threat. So we will see if that is implemented or not. But if you are a BRIC country, what are you doing? Are you planning? If you are a company, a big company that exports stuff to the US, are you going to plan for this extra 10% tariff? And those who collect tariffs in the US, will they immediately start imposing 10% extra on on countries from BRICS who are exporting stuff to the US. And when does that start? When does that extra 10% tariff on BRIC countries start? So we don't know any of that rubbish. So there is a global turmoil, and in this turmoil, one of the things that has happened is a growing divide between the United States and its allies, particularly Canada and Europe. So the Europeans are very confused on two levels. One, they're kind of shocked that the United States is going to impose tariffs on them. They never thought that a day would come when the United States would treat them like it treats China. And the second thing is, of course, they are worried about the enormous pressure Donald Trump is putting on their economies to increase their defense budgets to 5% of the GDP, which they can't afford 2% now. And how are they going to afford 5%, especially as the economies begin to slow down? And then they have this whole trade battle going on with the US over tariffs. And the second thing is they have a similar trade war going on with China. So these whole policies of de-risking and de-linking. So this summit, which is going to be on the 24th and 25th of July, and both the leaders of the European Union, uh, whatever her name is, I keep forgetting, van der Loosen and the other leader of European Union, I think his name is Antonio Costa. So European Commission and European Parliament. The leaders of these two are going to go over there uh, and they are going to have this summit. They're going to be business people, so it's a 2 day summit, and I will identify what the issues are that they are going to discuss. So one of the issues that they are going to discuss is this whole business of China imposing restrictions on critical earth minerals, which are creating havoc with manufacturing in the US as well as in China. In fact, the United States going back and reducing the tariffs from 145 to 55 for China was partly triggered by China using critical minerals, control of critical minerals. And with Europe, that matter has not yet been resolved. So the Europeans imposed 45% tariffs on uh, Chinese electric vehicles. Now, if you remember, the United States also has imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese electrical vehicles. This was before even Donald Trump got elected. This was basically Joe Biden's tariffs. So we don't even know now whether the tariffs on electric vehicles from China are they 55% or are they 100% on electric vehicles and 55 on everything else. We really don't know that. But anyway, we will find out sooner than later. But Europeans impose 45% tariffs on all electric vehicles coming from China. Now that creates an interesting problem for Germany because a lot of German cars, Volkswagen, Mercedes, Benz, BMW, Porsche, and some of their electric vehicles are actually manufactured in China. So you're going to have this bizarre situation where China will be manufacturing electric vehicles in Europe, in Serbia and Hungary, where it's building plants. And so it will sell Chinese electric vehicles like BYD. That's the BYD plant in Serbia with no tariffs. And Germany will be forced to pay 45% tariffs on the cars that it will be exporting from China to EU. So we have this really funny situation going on with Europe. But nevertheless, the Chinese are very upset with what Europe did, so they are controlling the export of minerals. So the first issue is going to be a discussion between Europe and China on this whole business of China loosening the control of critical minerals exports and China and Europe reducing the tariffs on electric vehicles. We'll see if that really happens or not. The second thing is the Europeans are also really very upset with what they now call as coercive economics. So China controlling the exports of critical minerals to Europe is apparently coercive economics. But the US not selling chips to China, Europeans imposing higher and higher tariffs on Chinese manufactured goods. What is that? Is that good economics or what? It's benign economics. It's very funny that they accuse China of coercive economics when China is merely responding to them imposing tariffs. So the third thing that they're going to talk about is opening of Chinese markets. China, in retaliation, has also imposed tariffs on French brandy and stuff like that. So they're going to try and talk about the growing tariff war between Europe and China. And then, of course, there are a couple of things which are non-economical, not economical, that China is very worried about. One is China's continuous support to Ukraine, to Russia in its war against Ukraine. So basically, Europeans want China to stop buying Russian oil, and so they're going to try and put pressure. The expectations are that basically China does not want to club the two issues there. So you keep the economic separate, keep your sanctions separate. In fact, we want to talk to you about coercive economics. You're imposing sanctions on us is coercive economics. In fact, the Europeans have been calling for more and more stricter sanctions on China. And for those of you who are familiar with it, Senator um, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has proposed a bill which is moving fast now. Donald Trump apparently likes the bill. This week is Lindsey Graham's birthday, so he, after playing golf with Donald Trump, said this would be the best birthday present, Mr. President, if he can pass this bill, which imposes 500% tariffs on all goods from countries which buy oil from Russia. So India and China both will have to immediately stop buying oil from Russia, or they will have to pay 500% tariffs. Uh, I think India will immediately stop that. India is not going to ever confront the United States, but China might, get into another tariff war. We will see what happens. India is also getting tired of Donald Trump. It appears that India has drawn its red lines, and so the chances of a big major bilateral trade agreement coming out in the near future is gone. There's some mini deal that is going to be announced by obviously Donald Trump in the next few days, but it's already July 9th in India. And so today, either the letter should have gone out to India, or the deal should have been announced, or the tariffs should have been imposed. None of those three are going to happen. And so we will be in a limbo for, I guess, a couple more weeks, or maybe one more week, to know what's going on with India. So the Europeans are putting a lot of geopolitical pressure on China to lift basically this whole business of tariffs, stop buying Russian oil so that they don't support Russia, and they want Russian economy to tank. So if China and India stop buying the Russian oil, then maybe Russia will feel that it needs to go and make a deal with China. So that is another thing that is being discussed. So Europe has been talking a lot about strategic autonomy and de-risking and deglobalization, etc. And China is opposed to these ideas because it feels that this is an attempt to prevent its growth and development. So I wanted to share with you some data that I have collected to see if basically there is a deglobalization and de-risking happening or not. So watch this data that I have here with me. So so this is basically a bar graph that shows EU's trade with US, which is in blue, US trade with China, India, the rest of Asia, which means Asia minus India and China, Latin America, and Africa. So basically Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and the United States. And this is from the year 2021, the year after COVID. So basically 5 years, the last 4 years and the current year. So if you look at Europe, which has been talking a lot of de-risking and restructuring globalization, reglobalization, basically reducing its dependence on China, this is what it has appeared. In 2021, this orange thing is China. The trade was $700 billion between Europe and China. It went up to 850, which was perhaps the highest in a long time in 2022. And then you can say there's a lot of talk of de-risking, deglobalization, etc. But it is steady from 2023 onwards in the last 2 years and forecasted for 2025. The trade between Europe and China is going to be at $750 billion flat. Now, that's a different thing that you could say that it is slightly negative because of inflation. So if it remains at the same level, that means there is a 2 to 3% reduction because of inflation. But China is experiencing deflation too. So for China, what it shows is that the exports have remained the same. So in a way, you could argue that there is no significant risking with China taking place from Europe. So Europe is continuing to trade at the same level today as it did 3 years ago. But if you look at US China, US Europe trade, now that is very interesting. So it was 675 in 2021, and then it caught up and overtook China by 2023. So it has gone over 850. So these 2 years are very critical. If you look at 2022 and 2023, they have flipped. So the trade with China now looks like the trade with US and vice versa. So US was a close second in 2022, and now China is becoming a distant second in 2023. And the trade with the US has been increasing continuously from 2021 till 2025. So they are expected to reach $900 billion in EU and US trade. So that is very interesting. That shows that the West is getting more economically connected in spite of all the talk. Now, if Donald Trump's tariffs were to be imposed, the 25% initially that he had talked about with the European Union, then we will see what happens to that number. Europe is caught between these two countries, China and the US. They really don't know what to do. Now, to give you an example of how shallow the European commitment to de-risking and restructuring the globalization chains to become independent of China is when you look at US-China trade. So this is US trade with EU, China, India, rest of Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Let me just show you something about India. So the India is the red one. So there's steady growth, a little bit growth in 2024 and 25, but there's no rapid growth between Europe and India. There's just a lot of talk. The free trade agreement with the UK, there's all this talk with Germany and with Italy. But as you can see, the trade is below 100, and it just went up to 100, 110. So the trade between Europe and the US in India is just 100 billion, a little more than 100 billion dollars. It is third when it comes to comparing with China and the US. But if you look at the US trade, you can see that. So I have here the first bar is EU, the second bar is with China, the third is with India, the fourth is the rest of Asia. The fifth, the green bar, is actually all of Americas, which is Latin America, South America, Mexico, Guatemala, all of the Caribbeans, and Canada combined. So basically all of Americas, the green one is. So if you look at it, the US has indeed reduced its trade with China from 650 in 2021. You can see the steady decline to less than 600. So it's about 580. So it went from somewhere like $800 billion in 2021 to 580. So the US has reduced its trade with with China from 650 to 580. So about $70 billion of trade reduction. But it is possible, if you like, lots of people think that it might be being rerouted through Vietnam and other countries. But if you look at this light blue thing, this is rest of Asia, which is Japan, Malaysia, Vietnam, South Korea. So there's not much increase in the rest of Asia. They're just hovering around 600. Whereas the real growth has been in Mexico. And so as a result of that, you can see the green thing going from 850 to close to 1200, $1.2 trillion. So what the US has done is called nearshoring. So it has moved a lot of manufacturing to Mexico, a lot to Vietnam also, but a lot to Mexico. So whatever trade loss you're seeing with China, that is transferring to Vietnam, and a little bit to Malaysia and Indonesia. But the real growth has been, so the US has done more in de-risking with China directly than Europe has. But China is tricking the US by rerouting its exports. So now Trump is imposing what is called as transshipment tariffs, which is for Vietnam, for example. For things made in Vietnam, the tariff is 20%, but for things made in China or anywhere else and being routed through Vietnam, it's called transshipment. The thing will be 40% tariffs. So anyway, so we will see what happens in the next 2 weeks of negotiations. Most experts feel that there's going to be no progress between China and Europe. So the tariffs which have been imposed will remain, and the tensions will remain, and uh, and basically there may be no shift in positions. But who knows? Europe is under tremendous pressure from both the US, and if the deal with the US doesn't come through, then Europe is going to be under a lot of pressure to move towards Asia. And last month, you saw Macron make a visit to Indonesia, and big talk of selling 100 Rafales to Indonesia and investing in Indonesia, building strategic partnership, strategic autonomy from China as well as from the US. So France says, let's be free from China, let's be free from the US, and let's trade with Indonesia, etc. So it's trying to sell its stuff to Indonesia. And you can see in the second segment in that I'm going to talk about now, you can see that that pressure to be autonomous or independent of the trades with China and US is making France behave in some very interesting ways. So I'm going to stop with that for this, and I have some comments to make with regards to the Rafale issue. So the discussion over Operation Sindoor is not yet over. It's nearly 2 months now. So, for example, this article was published just yesterday in The Diplomat by a former Indian colonel, a retired colonel. He runs a very good blog called The Broad Sword about Indian Army and Indian defense. So he wrote an article, Who Won the 100-Hour War, Pakistan or India? So this is being debated still, Pakistan or India. So this is still a question that Indian intellectuals and European and Western experts in the military are debating out there, which is quite fascinating because he refers to a statement made by an Indian military attaché in Indonesia at a conference in which he said that it was political decisions made by the Indian government because of which then Indian fighter jets, when they first attacked Pakistan, they were told, do not target Pakistan's military installations. Dr. Jaishankar made the phone call and said, look, we're not attacking Pakistan. We're not attacking Pakistan's military. We're not attacking Pakistan's people. We are only attacking terrorists. And later on, he said, we are not attacking Pakistan. We are attacking Terroristan. So basically, the infrastructure of terrorism that prevails in Pakistan. That is what he meant. But the political decision was not to hit military targets. So the Indian Air Force then did not hit India's air defense systems. So when they went up to fire missiles at the terrorist camps, the 9 terrorist camps that India targeted, they received anti-aircraft, basically defense. And as a result of that, they lost several jets. So the Indian military officers, all of them who have spoken on this subject, have acknowledged that India has lost several jet fighters. The number is being bandied 3 to 5, 3 to 5. And when the number 6 is said, everybody in the military said, no, that is wrong. No one has said that is wrong to 3. No one has been asked if India lost 5. So the speculation is it's 3 to 5. and it is either one or two Rafales. And if you remember, very early on, the French intelligence had acknowledged that a Rafale jet was lost. But now the discussion has shifted. Where look at this media. I just took a few screenshots to show you what's going on. Look at all these articles that you see are just about Rafale, and the CEO of Rafale and the Indian military talking about how China has been influencing. I will talk about it, but just see as to how many articles have been published in the last 4 or 5 days just on this topic. So, so what is being discussed? There are several things that are going on. The Indian military is slowly telling the public that yes, we lost some jets. They're not telling us what jets have been lost. So they are saying that we have lost some jets. Most people are saying either two Rafales and one Sokoa, or one Rafale, one Sokoa, and one old Jaguar, the old French uh, made fighter jets, or one MiG, one Rafale, and one Mirage. So some weird combination of this. One old Japanese French technology, one new French technology, and one Russian is what is being suggested. So the Indian military is definitely acknowledging that they have lost some jets, and then they said, "Oh, so we made adjustments, and then we hit the air bases and air defense system, so much so that India destroyed Pakistan's air defense system, and so by May 10th, India was had complete air superiority." And then the question comes, so if India had established air superiority, why did it immediately agree for a ceasefire? Pakistan obviously would want a ceasefire at that moment, because now they would get their asses kicked. So there are a lot of complications about the way the Modi government has handled this whole affair. It's a total mess. But now what has happened is that there seems to be a battle going on between India and Rafale, because there are leaks coming out of the Indian government saying that source codes were not transferred by the Rafale to India, and as a result of the lack of source codes, India could not integrate India's Indian-made missiles, surface to surface, surface to ground air defense missiles on the Rafale because of the lack of the source code. And therefore, those Rafale jets were a bit defenseless against attacks. So they were ready to attack. They could shoot their missiles from surface to ground missiles, which they used to target the terrorist bases, but they could not defend themselves. You must remember that Rafale is not a stealth fighter, so it is not hidden from radar. And so there is some blame on by India on Rafale. But the Rafale at first are either trying to say, they try to say that it was maybe a pilot error, like they're trying to do with Air India, or there was a maintenance problem or something like that. And then the Chinese got into it. So apparently, the Chinese embassies and the Chinese proxies, they created about 1,000 or more fake accounts on social media, and they started spreading the story that 3, 5 Rafales were all shot down by JC-10s and etc. So the Japanese Chinese technology is far superior to the French technology. So the French, especially the private sector French, the Rafale CEO, etc., are saying that this is just propaganda from the Chinese, who are trying to basically undermine the sales of Rafale and replace that with Rafale. And you can see that something like that is happening in Indonesia. So Indonesia ordered 42 Rafales. They have not got even one. I don't know whether they have made the payment, but that is a deal that has been signed. And now Macron went there last month and tried to say, why don't you make the order from 42 to 100? And then the Chinese have also apparently made a presentation and reached out. And apparently, the Chinese are reaching out to all countries which either have Rafale or have expressed interest in buying Rafale jets, like Egypt and Qatar, and trying to tell them that, look, you saw it's no good. You need to buy our technology, which is far superior. So I think the whole battle between uh, uh, A to Amitabh Dash, brilliant point. It's from air to surface missiles here. So That's what India initially claimed, that the source code was not available. So there are a lot of these things going on. I think the Indian government should come out and just basically say what happened and let that be the final thing, because Indian government is losing credibility very fast on this issue. And the Indian military people, they still enjoy respect, and they are not lying at all. But they are, when they are participating, they are forced into corners where they have to be very careful what they say, and so they're not able to speak about it. So this particular person in Indonesia, the military attaché who was answering a question, basically spoke the truth as to what was happening. If he did not speak the truth, then he's lying. So why would an Indian military attaché lie? What is his interest? Is he taking money from the Chinese, or is he taking money from Rafale? If that is the case, then he should be immediately brought back home and punished and court-martialed, isn't it? So there's a lot of mess going on with this Rafale. So basically, what has happened is the war ended within 100 hours, and after the end of the war, what is happening is, first there was this whole debate about the crisis as to how the ceasefire happened, what the role of Donald Trump was. Pakistan and the US say that this is because of Donald Trump that there is ceasefire. India says no, even though there are lots and lots of mediation that has gone. So constantly, the Americans were talking to India. So Dr. Jaishankar, Narendra Modi, Ajit Doval were all being talking that whole night with the Americans, and in the morning, it was Donald Trump who announced the ceasefire first. So how did he know that India and Pakistan, without any mediation, without anything, had agreed to a ceasefire? Anyway, so that is where we are, and the drama continues with whether it is Rafale or not. We will see what happens. For Rafale, it's very important because they could basically lose a lot of business. The Turks have announced that Indonesia has decided not to buy Rafale jets and is buying the fifth generation Turkish fighter plane called the Khan, Kaan. I have done a full show on the fifth generation fighter jet that Turkey has, which has actually done a test flight. So a week or two after their test flight, I did a show. So you can go to this channel and you will find that show. So anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about today. And so I will now see if there are any questions or any comments, and then be happy to answer your questions. Mandeep Kumar, good morning to you too. Lalit Mohan, hello. Naveed Akhtar, thanks for coming back again. And good morning to you. Amitav Dash, you should understand that I probably misspoke. Uh, uh, Obviously. So anyway, that is what the Indian military in the first day, that the first few days, said that we did not receive the source code for Rafale. So why did they feel the need to announce that to the public? I'm convinced that India has lost at least one Rafale. That's why all these comments keep coming out. That Rafale has not transferred us with the source code, so we could not use defensive weapons against air defenses, or we didn't attack air defenses, etc. And then this officer in Indonesia, his comments then went forward. So anyway, world peace. Turkey, Hyderabad, Nizam, Zindabad. Yeah, the last. There used to be a lot of Turkish princesses marrying Hyderabadi Nizams. In fact, I think the Nilofer Hospital in Durre Shahwar those are the names of the Turkish princesses who were married to the Nizams. And so the Nilofer Hospital in Hyderabad is named after her. There was another princess called Durre Shahwar. I don't know much about her, so I can't tell you. It's an unusual name, so it's stuck in my head. So I don't see any more questions or comments. So I will take a break. So if you have not already subscribed to Khanversations, do subscribe to Khanversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and share this video with your social political network. Sir, why India compare itself to Pakistan? That's a very good question, Mandeep Kumar. I keep saying that if India wants to play Test cricket, then it shouldn't talk about its Ranji Trophy at all. Why worry about what's going on in the Ranji Trophy? Go play Test cricket. And world politics is Test cricket. Regional politics is about Ranji Trophy. See, the problem is that India wants to talk of itself as a world power, as a global power. Dr. Jaishankar always goes around saying this is a multipolar world, and there are 5 or 6 major powers in the world. One is India, one is China, one is Europe, one is Russia, one is America. Really, come on. And India immediately agrees to a ceasefire with Pakistan. A lot of people outside India, when I talk to people here, I talk to lots of experts. There are many American experts who think that India panicked after it lost a few jets in the first encounter. And so it was able to immediately claim victory and go for a ceasefire. They didn't want this to get prolonged, especially given how much support China was giving to Pakistan. And so, India tried to hyphenate itself with the US. But as a result of Operation Sindoor, it has been rehyphenated with Pakistan. So it's India, Pakistan, everybody's talking. And it also became a kind of a blessing for Pakistan. So Asim Munir gets invited to White House. Pakistan wins seats in important committees at the UN Security Council. It is in July. Pakistan is the chairman of the UN Security Council. Can you imagine that? And then on top of that, Pakistan got all these loans from IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, etc. And Trump keeps saying nice things about Asim Munir as well as about Pakistan these days. So for Pakistan, it was a diplomatic bonanza fighting with India. It has rehyphenated, it has elevated the status of Pakistan. Anyway, world peace has kind of lost his marbles, I think. Good morning, namaste, watching from Nepal. Hello, Milan, how are you? Uh, Thank you for watching. You always do. I look forward to you. And so that's very nice. Do you have any questions from Nepal? Tell me something about the what is happening with the in Nepal about the train connection between China, and there's so much of talk about that there will be a chain connection between in Nepal and China, and we haven't heard much going forward. So we will see what happens. They say that it's technologically very difficult to achieve, but we will see whether that connection really happens or not. Anyway, so I don't see any more comments or questions. So everybody, thank you for watching Conversations. Oh, okay, that's interesting. By 2028, I did a show in which I just discussed it briefly, but it is a very expensive apparently project, and it's going to be a engineering miracle when it is made, because it will be going through very high heights and through a lot of ice and snow, I guess. So we will see, and but that will be a major victory for China in South Asia. Khan sir, Amitav says there was a lot of uh, uh, what happened? Where did it go? About the back channel comment, it disappeared. Okay, I think it is. Amitav, you deleted your own message. Okay. Amitav Dash. Uh, yes, sir, bridge and tunnels are needed. We will see what happens with that. I am a student from IIT Roorkee. Oh, wow, good job, Mandeep. Milan, it's difficult but not impossible. Sure, surely it is not. We'll see what happens. The Chinese are doing some incredible construction work. They just recently came up with a train which travels at 670 miles per hour. I've never been to China. I'm looking forward. I'm trying to find some excuse. I usually wait for somebody to invite me before and pay for my travel. I have traveled to more than 70, 80 countries and spoken at more than 500 universities overseas. And I've never actually paid for my travels at all. In fact, the last two trips I made to India, one was paid by the Telangana chief minister, and the other was paid by a grant from the university. So in that way, I'm a little confused when it comes to my own travel. My daughter went to China, and she was saying she traveled in one of those speed, really fast trains, and she said it's like getting jet lagged at the end of it, especially if it's the first time you're traveling. I did travel in a fast train in Spain. That was the fastest I saw, but it was only 340 or 350 kilometers per hour. But that's the fastest I've gone in a train. But in the US, it's only 120, 130 miles per hour. So maybe 160, 170. They have something called the Acela, which goes from New York to Washington, D.C., and it stops in Delaware. And I have taken that on most occasions. I prefer to travel by that, but that doesn't go even 200 kilometers per hour. Yes, I have. India, yes, I have. In fact, I saw one of his uh, uh, interviews on ANI. He's actually, his channel is huge, a huge channel, and he's probably also very wealthy and highly respected. Apparently, he he launched his channel because of COVID, because he used to have this tuition where he teaches people to apply for various exams in India. You know, you have to apply whether for banks or something like that. So yes, I did Google him once, and then recently when he did this he had a very interesting commentary on Operation Sindoor. Uh, and he even says that, okay, so if we were winning the war, then what was the rush to do the ceasefire? The logic. So it was an interesting interview to watch. Those of you who are in India, I will be coming back again at 12:30, and I will do this in Hindi. And since I don't write the script, I mean, I will show the same slides, but I will talk about it, and perhaps we will talk about different issues. Uh, and uh, and so, thank you very much for watching. I will be up again tomorrow again. So hope to see you all again. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.